He's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with over 27 years of experience. Together, we're the Brief Brothers. We love talking about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. We're back for another episode, Henry. Today, we have a returning guest, Marc Lewis. He's the Dean of the School of Creative Arts in London, and he's got an interesting story to tell us this time around. Let's take a listen. Henry, we're back with another episode, and we are delighted to have join us again, returning to our show, Marc Lewis. He is the Dean of the School of Communication Arts in London, a wildly popular and very successful school for young and actually not so young folks who are interested in making advertising their profession. So it's for copywriters, art directors. I'm guessing it's also for account folks and strategy, the whole bit. So Marc.
Not account folks. We like account folks, but we don't train them. Creatives and strategy. We love strategy and we love creative. But client services, we like them, but we don't want to be them.
Right. Well, Marc Lewis, welcome back to the Brief Brothers. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be back. Thank you very much. I think I left something. I must have left one of my British umbrellas last time I was here, and here I am to collect it.
Well, we're so eager to have you back because you have a bit of news to share with our viewers about what's going on at the SCA, the School of Communication Arts. And we want to give you a platform to talk about that in the broader picture of also the value and the acceptance of training for young folks and not so young folks in our industry. So I'm going to let you kind of take us down that path. But, before we get started, I just want to give you a chance to reintroduce yourself to our audience, for those of our viewers who may not have caught that first episode. I know it's been about a year, I think, since you were on the show. So tell us again, you are the Dean of the School of Communication Arts in London. How did you get involved in this?
Yeah.
Your background.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, it's lovely to be back, and thank you. And it's Friday, 7:00 as we record this. It's the end of my week, and it's just a gorgeous way to unwind with you both. And so thank you for that. A very quick introduction, if for those that aren't long-time subscribers of yours and aren't avidly going through your back catalogue, and might have stumbled upon me. I run the School of Communication Arts in London. We are the world's most awarded ad school. We have been for the last 10 years. We're one of the world's last portfolio schools. I'll come to that in a minute. And that's kind of interesting that we are the last portfolio school in the UK. We're one of the last portfolio schools in the world. And I'll talk about the death of portfolio schools in America in just a moment. Half of our students receive scholarships, have done since day one. A lot of that is because of my personal story when I was a student at this school. You can find out about that story in a previous episode if you want, or I can talk about that briefly in a little bit later. But in any event, the school runs on scholarships. The part resource, when we bring people from different backgrounds together, they come with different dots. And it's our job to find those dots and connect those dots to have great ideas, to find great insights. And the more diverse those people are through their experiences, through their age or their culture or whatever, the more likely it is that they are going to have a basket of different dots to put on the table when they feel it's safe to put on the table. And that's been the school's ethos since day one. Is to do that. And we do that thanks to support from about 30 agencies. And they're on our website, and if I start to name check them, I'm going to forget some of them, and then I'm going to offend one of them. So they're on the school's website, but they're the biggest of the greatest agencies, and they support us through the spirit of reciprocity. So reciprocity is my North Star. And for me, reciprocity is about all of us have I believe, a better life and a responsibility to put more water back in the well than we take. When we live with that energy that we can all thrive when we are all thinking about how to put more back than we take, everybody thrives. So that's the model of the school. That's the ethos of the school. So when the agencies support us to run scholarships, they're getting access to my talent. So they get the opportunity to design my curriculum, to meet my students, to set briefs, to give them feedback, to get to know who they are, and to have exclusive access to offer them placements and then jobs. And because they're the most awarded students on the planet, for example, we've won the D&AD Black Pencil 6 years in a row. And there is no agency on the planet that's done that. We've done
That's
it
awesome.
as the school. So yeah, so these agencies are getting incredible value both by setting briefs. So we are an external creative department for them to identify emerging talent, incredibly diverse in every sense of that word, who are incredibly well trained. So that's been the model of the school, and I've been doing it that way since I reopened the school in 2010, and we've thrived. Until about COVID, when things got a lot harder, and then cost of living crisis and things have got a lot harder. So we've had to hustle and hustle and hustle. We came to realize that we were hitting overdrafts, and we shouldn't be doing that, and borrowing. We shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. Creative Circus announced their closure in the US. I decided last year to speak to the guys running Creative Circus and say, look, where did it go wrong, and what would you do differently? Are you aware of Creative Circus and
Well, why don't you
their
bring us up to
history that they're
speed?
closing?
Maybe Henry is, but I'm not. So what is Creative
Okay.
Circus, and
I mean,
what's its connection to you?
They were a great portfolio school, just a great multi-award winning, thriving portfolio school for a long while, with a great reputation, and a great culture. And what I was hearing was that they had a long history of putting good talent into great agencies and a lot of love from the industry, but the industry was starting to try and put their own training programs together, and thinking that they had the intellectual property within their own agencies to become internal incubators of knowledge. And so they stopped supporting, if at all they were supporting, Creative Circus, and they certainly weren't supporting them by buying training product from them. So as a school, we decided to do two things. One is to give all of our content free of charge to all of our sponsors. So all of our courses, all of our classes are always recorded, put into a library. And so everybody that works for any of our sponsors' agencies can go through the library and watch one of those courses. And we felt that was the first defense, right? Was just to create this bundle of content and just say, rather than you think that you can badly create and deliver IP, when we've got phenomenal faculty or Howard sharing a talk, we'll put it in the library. Or obviously with a Howard, we would ask you in advance. If it's an external speaker, if it's faculty, it's part of the deal. So that's the first line of defense. The second line is to go, well, then let's take the very best content we've got and make it brilliant for people who work in agencies. On my second day as a student at the school, when I was at the school, my old teacher, John Gillard, gave me a book to read. And I think I might have mentioned this book to you when I chatted to you last time. The book's Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And I probably spoke to you about it in a sense of exponential change, but there's a line in the book that Toffler says, and he wrote this book in 1958. There's a line in the book that he says, the illiterate of the 21st century won't be those who can't read or write. It'll be those who fail to learn and unlearn and relearn. Just before we hit record in this chat, the three of us were talking about AI and how it's affecting Gran Turismo and stuff like that. Because Henry is into racing, so we were chatting about AI in computer gaming. But everybody that's watching this knows that AI is going to affect our industry. It's going to take particular processes and jobs away from each of us, and the aggregate will be that all of us will constantly need to relearn. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. We are awful as human beings at knowing what to learn, where to learn, how to learn. We leave education not having been taught this stuff. We're given a timetable and told what to learn from the minute we arrive at school to the minute we leave. And often we get told what to learn by our parents or our peers. So one of the responsibilities, I think, of employers is to help their people work out what they need to learn or want to learn, and unlearn and relearn. So last summer, I spoke to our 30 sponsors, partners, and gave them a menu of things that come from our 300 or so bits of units of content, if you like. And from that, we have a suite of a first sort of cheese board, if you like, of short courses. Some that are delivered live, face-to-face online, or face-to-face in London, or for the right package, I'd fly across the pond. And some of them are pre-recorded. And the more we see demand, the more that we'll create. And every time, in the spirit of reciprocity, every time we sell a course, all the money goes towards scholarships. 80% of it goes towards SCA scholarships, and 20% goes towards our sisters, our partners, Brixton Finishing School, run by an amazing leader, Ali Owen, and they feed us a lot of scholarship talent. So that's our partner on this project. So here's the message to anybody watching this that has any authority or power is, if you have the authority to teach yourself, to train yourself, to go out and keep on learning, and you're not taking that agency, I'd love it if one of the things you think about is looking at our courses amongst other courses, and that this particular episode provokes you to start thinking about learning something new or relearning something new. If you manage other people's learning, and it's been at the back of your mind to do something, to take leadership, to be an agent of change in this world of fast change, again, I'd love it if you would look at our suite of products, of courses, and look at the testimonials and maybe give it a try, knowing that it's helping to fund those scholarships. That's really my ask. But the underlying message is, I've been trying to sell these courses now since Howard, I reached out to you about 6-8 weeks ago. I see an apathy. I don't know if it's the same in the US. I see an apathy in this industry, different to the consultancy industry, right? When I'm speaking to Accenture or Simba, I see an energy that understands that its talent needs to be invested in because it sells talent. And the more it invests in its talent, the more it's going to receive an ROI. I'm not seeing that level of entrepreneurial intelligence and forward thinking at the moment. And I, at least in the conversations that I've been having in the UK, and I wouldn't mind exploring with you, because I know that you're involved in education too. But this for me, I've got a dog in the fight, clearly, because I want to sell training because it's going to fund scholarships. We are the world's best school, and therefore I think we're going to supply the world's best corporate training. Our partner told us what they need, and that's what we've written. So please come and buy. But underneath all that, the speed of change gets faster. Guys, we need to invest in our talent.
So I'm not surprised that you described the agency appetite as apathetic. Frank, and that the consultants are much more aggressive. Frankly, that's the way I would characterize. You didn't use that word. I would use that word. I think the consultants are encroaching on the agency world, and they know it's not their world, and therefore they want to bone up and learn. Whereas I think the agency world is trying to stand pat, even as it's losing territory to the consultancies. Um, Howard and I have lamented often how training has gone by the wayside, particularly at the big agencies. They used to have, training programs. Um, Something that you said really struck a chord with me, which was if our listeners who are inclined toward or have been thinking about self-education, because that's something that for me was always a big deal, because I joined an ad agency with an economics degree. So I didn't know anything about advertising. And then I got into strategy almost on a lark. And I had to learn. And so the only way that I could learn was to teach myself and ask people that I thought knew. So I was always all about self-learning. And then, in 2016, Mark Ritson began advertising a mini MBA in marketing. He's
Yeah.
he's a columnist for Marketing Week, and this was, and
Yeah. Amazing.
it was a pretty big chunk of money at the time, but I started having an internal debate with myself, and I said, well, how long have you been in this business? And at that time, I'd been in the business 20 years. Said, how much has the business given you, and how much have you reinvested back in your own education? And the answer was a lot versus zero. And so I said, to spend, 1,200 pounds at the time was a big lift, but it was something that I saw as an investment. A funny anecdote was that I bought the course, and like the next day was Brexit and the British pound crashed. And if I had waited 2 days, I would have gotten like a $300-400 discount just on the exchange difference. But no matter, it was a bargain at twice the price. I since then have taken his brand management mini MBA. So I'm a big believer in continuing education. We could always learn something more, even if we're currently doing the job. We hear all the time on LinkedIn and in the popular culture about imposter syndrome. Well, one of the ways to beat imposter syndrome is to train yourself and make sure that you've been trained at the places where the best have been trained. And that's one of the things that alleviates my imposter syndrome, is I know that I've taken these courses with Mark, among which some of the brightest marketers in the UK and around the world have taken, and I got an A in both courses. So I can kind of, at least on a comparative basis, say at least I have a similar background to what a lot of these people have done. So
I embrace my imposter syndrome. I've got 2 books, so who cares? But I mean, Henry speaks to a really important point. What you're doing, Mark, is getting young people and not so young people off the ground. But what you're also talking about is next steps. Every profession at least preaches, whether it practices as I don't know, but they preach continuing education. My father was a physician. Henry's father is a physician, retired, I believe. And my dad always went back to school to learn the new technique, whatever was going on. This happens with accountants. This happens with plumbers. It has to happen with creative people. So what you're doing, I think, is brilliant and necessary. But I agree with Henry. My biggest clients are the marketers themselves. They're on the client side. I don't get very many ad agencies asking for my assistance because they say, we already know how to write a brief. We don't need training in brief writing.
They don't. So here's the thing: is our partners, our sponsors, get the right to set our students' briefs. So every week, I'm receiving loads of briefs from agencies, and I have to edit them before giving them to students. Often, the brief is not a brief; it's a 40-page deck. It's not
from
a brief.
The agencies,
and from the agencies. I mean, there are some agencies that nail it, but there are a lot of agencies that don't, and they know who they are, and they'll come along with a 40-page deck, and or even if they come with a document, it's not a. There are a couple of agencies, a few agencies that will have a template. That doesn't necessarily mean they found a human insight, that they've nailed a proposition. So they might have a template, but that template is almost painting by numbers, and is sometimes filled in mindlessly because it's kind of there. Um,
Mm.
um, so um, so sometimes people take for granted that people know what they need to do, but they're not being reminded or supported or
I would
whatever.
edit.
I say
I would,
sometimes quite incorrectly.
yeah, I would say I would edit the word sometimes out of that sentence, Mark. I mean, one
Yeah,
of the things
yeah.
that, Henry did years ago, which is how we met, is something that I haven't had much of, and that's a request to do training from an ad agency. Henry and I share something. We share a lot of things in common. One of them is that I'm self-taught as well. I didn't know what a brief was. I just knew that I was getting a document that didn't cut it. So I had to learn, okay, what is a good brief? Who taught me? Well, one of our earliest guests, wow, it's been 2 years, was Lance Saunders. Lance Saunders retired recently as the Chief Operating Officer of DDB Canada. I met him when he was Director of Strategy at Campbell Methuen in Minneapolis. He's the one who introduced me to John Steele. He's the one who introduced me to, all these great, people who've talked and written about the brief and got my education started. So it is an ongoing thing. And the thing is, I'm a creative. I'm not a strategist, which is another reason why Henry and I have so much fun together, because we have a passion for this thing called a brief from two entirely different perspectives.
I think we have an overlapping interest, right? I think I'm a frustrated copywriter who works in strategy, and Howard is a very strategic minded creative. So there's a lot of overlap, I think, in the way we look at an advertising problem, a marketing problem that can be solved through advertising. So it was fortunate that we met, and I think that's one of the reasons why we hit it off. But I do think I'm not shocked, although I am disgusted by the fact that agencies that see the value in your school and are investing in it and are sending briefs are sending bad briefs to you. To me, like I said, I'm not surprised, but it is kind of disillusioning.
Well, it's an element of trust too, because I can't get briefs from agency people I know because they say, oh, it's proprietary, we can't show it to you. So the fact that they're sending you brand new briefs, however unfinished, I think is a mark of trust.
Well, yeah, remember that we are an outsourced creative department as part of their sponsorship. So they pay us to set briefs through the year. That's part of their package, as they have that benefit a couple of times a year each to set briefs. So we have to see the briefs. And it's possible, and there are, amongst my 30 or so partners, there are 4 or 5 really good ones. And I think they know who they are. It wouldn't come as a surprise. They tend to be the bigger or the creative agencies. Whereas perhaps the ones that are calling themselves things like social agencies or earned media agencies, maybe haven't PR agencies, maybe haven't got the departments and the processes. And even if you're an agency, not all of my agencies, even if they have the departments and processes, not all of them are always all of the time following, thinking through the brief, doing the work and finding an interesting way in. That's definitely a fact. And one of the courses I love teaching because of that, it's so black and white. I'm sure you're the same. It's so black and white. What happens when somebody takes the time to see how good they can be.
So if for individuals and institutions that want to get more information, want to sign up for these trainings, where do they go?
Well, I don't know whether there is a link. I forget what links you provide when people are watching this on
We can
Any
put
links you want.
online with
want.
the video. Yeah, cool. So I'll send you that. But if you're listening to this and you just want to try and remember it, we're called SCA. So remember SCA creativetraining.com. SCA creativetraining.com, and you'll see the first short courses that we're providing our partners. But if there's anything else that you want to learn, we've got about 300 different subjects that we teach our students at the school. and we slice them together for our partners, or we create bespoke stuff, and we'd love to do it for
And
you.
what, Mark,
But yeah,
what are your
train,
price
learn.
points? What is it? What's going to cost someone who wants to take one of these courses?
Yeah, let's get to the commercial facts. They start at £150 a person. Yeah,
Which is
for a
roughly
live place,
$175, something like that.
180 bucks,
yeah,
something like that.
And £180 right now will buy you a 6-hour video, amazing course with 2 live sessions with me. I mean, $170, 2 live sessions with me, and six videos.
That's a great price. That is a bargain.
Yes,
Twice the price.
It's half price right now. Yeah. We've discounted it just as an experiment to see what interest and what testimonials we can get from it. So we just thought that see what we can get, just see how many people will do it and give us feedback and blah.
And what's been the success so far? Are you getting responses from the United States? Are there other places on the planet that are responding? What's going on?
I mean, we get to chat to people and teach people around the world, but not in volume in the US. I would love to be teaching by the hundreds to the US market. I think you guys really know how to sell. I find that really attractive. I love your sense of humor. I find that really attractive. I think
We need the training.
There are stuff that you find attractive about. Yeah. And I think the price is attractive to you. But so I think we could also teach each other stuff. I think that the two cultures that, well, if we bring some American cohort to meet some of my European students, back to that word diversity again, I'm really interested to see like what happens, because we tend to run courses. Even my recorded content, there are live moments where you all come together. So for example, I have this product called Creativity Unleashed. It's 6 one-hour sessions recorded and 2 live sessions with me. But those live sessions, you tend to meet up, like 10 different students will book the same time, and we're all chatting and sharing experiences together. They're really fun. They're really fun. They're kind of like online fireside chats of people that are taking my course. And what I'd love to see some people in America doing that, coming along to meet some of the people that work for some of my agencies, or people that have been following me and are doing the course now that it's cheaply available.
It's it's very appealing, I think, and and I think that would be a great benefit to American students, particularly because of the nature of advertising, especially in the UK, where, to Howard's point earlier, if anything, in the UK, they take it much more seriously than the practitioners take it much more seriously than they do in the US. I mean, I always comment on the fact that in the UK, there's an institute for the practitioners of advertising. We don't have such a thing in the United States, but even the name practitioner, it's a very serious, and there are continuing education credits in the UK. Those mini MBA courses, if I were living and working in the UK, those mini MBA courses I took with Ritson account for continuing education credits. We don't have any of that structure
100%.
or seriousness applied here. So that would be my appeal to American audiences is, there's a lot that we can learn. The UK, in my opinion, has always been several steps ahead of the United States in terms of the advertising culture and the learning culture around advertising. And as these institutions have peeled back from that training role that they once had, I think it's important for people to take the bull by the horns and really put themselves in charge of their own training.
Yeah, Mark, one of the things I realized or have come to admire them a great deal about the UK is that everything that what Henry said is true, but what is even more important that we don't always talk about is that because of the culture of great creative in the UK, you and your colleagues over generations have done an amazing job of training the consumer to expect great advertising. We could learn a lot from that alone. It's a cliche perhaps, but the Americans are really good at selling value. The Brits, I think, have always been great at selling an idea. And that's the difference between powerful, emotional driven, humor driven, insight driven advertising that I've always admired about the Brits. I wish we did more of that.
I'd love to be teaching a lot of that to you guys as well. I'm also fascinated to see what happens when we bring, as I say, cohorts together, whether it's on something like Creativity Unleashed, which is our 6-part pre-recorded, 2-part live, or Boot Camp, which is 6 live, where we bring, generally it's either people who work for our partners or their clients together. So what's quite fun is some of our sponsors bring their clients along to boot camp sessions, 6 live sessions in school over a couple of month period working on a project. Eventually, I don't see why we don't have, loads of people, particularly on the East Coast of America, thinking about using us as an alternative to a master's program. It's cheaper, much cheaper than doing a master's.
It's real world.
And you're going to get much.
Yeah,
it's real world, and you're going to get hundreds of contacts, hundreds and hundreds of master classes, and a great portfolio. Probably win loads of awards. Most of our students do, and again, as I say, it's cheaper than doing a master's. If anybody is thinking about that, yeah.
I don't know if you thought about this, Mark, but Henry and I have amassed 116 episodes. And some of those episodes are reviews of creative, but most of the episodes are either interviews with, scalawags like you, great creatives and teachers, but it's also nuts and bolts of how a creative brief comes together. So there's opportunities for you to take advantage of our library for your students. And I don't think Henry would mind if we say that, I've gone on record with you that we're available to do what we can, to contribute.
You're very generous with your time.
To your teaching and to your talking to your students. Henry's got a little bit more restricted schedule than I do, but we support. Henry and I both love to work with students, and I for one would love to have another conversation. I've had at least one. Was there one or maybe two? I forget, but at least one conversation with some of your students. They are sharp. They're bright, they're engaged, they're fun. And that space that you had was pretty cool too, as I recall. So call on us, we would love to do what we can.
Thank you. You're really generous with your time. And I think that Shannon, my producer for delivering to my students, is trying to get a date with you, or at least Will, which is coming back. I know I've asked her to, and to pick the moment live where they can chat to you and ask you questions is obviously so much more valuable than asking them to go and watch the last time that we had you or anything in your library, not least because I don't always trust my students are going to go and do that. Whereas if it's part of the schedule and then we build a reflection moment around it, we're getting some of the opportunity for some proper learning psychology, learning theory to take place. The school, whether it's a short course, whether it's a 2-hour short course or a 1-year portfolio school, everything that we design is built on something called Kolb's learning cycle. So we believe absolutely that you should be able to receive a piece of information, apply it to something, experiment, see what it feels like, and then have a shared moment or a personal moment to reflect upon it. And all of that needs to happen. And I, as a course leader and group heads and whatever, we kind of have a responsibility to make sure, whether it's a short course or a long course, that everybody's experienced in Kolb. They're going through cycles of learning and they're getting better as faster as they're going through those cycles. And my fear, and going back to, I've dumped everything into a library for my agencies as that first line of defense. That's basically saying, you guys don't need to write anything. It's already here. That's kind of like the wall, right? It's just like saying, agencies, know your place, because but I don't know if it's the same in the US, but believe in the UK, there are a lot of particularly executive creative directors that think they can also be teachers. I don't know. I don't think I can be an executive creative director. I'm a fucking great teacher. So,
Yeah.
I stated like that sort of thing. So that barrier, that decision to give all my stuff to all my partners, again, it's literally just to stop them from wasting their time and energy trying to do something badly. And then when it comes to the learning experiences, we've got decade plus of award-winning, proven time and time again with diverse talent, all walks of life. How can we get them to reach elite levels, under pressure? And that's what we'd love to keep on doing and expand. Whether it's a 2-hour opportunity or as I say, a 1-year opportunity or longer.
Mark, are you familiar with a concept called the flipped classroom?
No, I'm not.
It's a pedagogical term. It's a really simple idea. It's a way that you can use online videos like the library that Henry and I put together, plus YouTube or anything. You build your lesson plan around what's on that content, and then you quiz your students on it. So
Okay.
if they don't watch the
Okay.
video,
Yeah, okay.
now quiz. When I say quiz, I don't literally mean an exam, but I mean you build the lesson plan around. It's like Henry and I did 4 episodes where Henry wrote a brief and I played, his attractive assistant for a product. We put a request out to our YouTube or to our LinkedIn audience saying, suggest 3 brands and 3 problems, a problem that each brand is facing. And Henry and I chose one. We chose Hulu. And then we watched over 3 episodes. Viewers watched as Henry did the research. We started answering the questions and he formatted a brief. So a flipped classroom concept is where you assign the students in one of your classes our 4 episodes, and you build your discussion points around what we've done. So they have to watch the videos in order to do the homework.
Trick.
Yeah, that's what they call a flipped
Cool.
classroom.
Cool.
And it's a great concept of you don't have to go out and create the content. The content exists out there. You just build your conversation. Maybe you have small group discussions, but you build the lesson plan around the pre-existing content. Takes a lot of the pressure off you as an educator.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I guess a part of me, because I sometimes describe my role as a bit of a preacher and a circus ringmaster. And when you buy one of my short courses, you'll see that I've cast lots of people to share the teaching with me and tell their stories and whatever. So there should be some showmanship in it all. So that control freakery in me, that I want my people to get involved, but to have a fun time and to meet some cool people and to have a shared experience and to feel they're coming out of the theatre, because our space feels like a theatre, whether it's online or in person.
Well, I'll agree
to
with
come out
that.
and feel that you just to feel that you've been part of a shared, live, lived experience. I think that learning done best is so social. It's so interactive, and Mark Ritson's programs you cited before, they are so collaborative, and there's such a sense of community and togetherness. And although he is brilliant and the content is incredible, I think the community has also become part of the value of a Mark Ritson course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, Marc Lewis, Dean of the School of Communication Arts in London, an amazing institution that's been around for not long enough. It needs to be around forever and ever. Thank you for joining Henry and me on the Brief Brothers. Again, it was great having you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It's so lovely to see you.
Good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Eibach. And together, we're the Brief Brothers. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.